your argument before the court with a question about the racial bias during the jury delay.
At the end of my argument, I closed with the question in rebuttal. The last thing the court had heard was that it is well established that there was racism permeating the district attorney's office both before the trial of Mumia Abu-Jamal in 1982 and well after. And are we to assume that with these bookends of racism in case after case after case, it's well documented that this case is the exception with all the racism and what was swirling around the trial, that it did not exist in this case, that this is one exception of all the cases tried by the district attorney's office in which they did not discriminate against people because they were African American, because they were black? That was my question to the court. A rhetorical question, and that's how I ended. That you have the Bowler study, a number of other, there's a wealth of evidence from judicial decisions that racism was at work in case after case after case. And the biggest case in the history of this city, Mumia Abu-Jamal, it wasn't at work in this case. Give me a break. The prosecution used two-thirds of their strikes to remove black people from sitting on the jury, only 25% who were white. That in and of itself is racism.
We can do our job.
And all we ask for in this case, I think people need to understand that all we are asking for in this case is a fair trial. We need a new trial in this case. The first trial was
I can't do my job.
You got me put it no way.
The first trial was riddled with racism. There was no investigation. The jury only heard one side of the coin. This time, we want a new trial in which all the evidence is presented and a trial that is fair and that's not permeated in an atmosphere of severe racism. And that's all we're asking is fairness. And it has never occurred. And waiting on the U.S. Court of Appeals to render a decision. There's no way of knowing how long it will take. It could be 30 days, it could be 45 days, it could be 90 days, but it will take a while for there to be a decision by this court. I do nothing but death penalty work. It's all I've done for 30 years, quite successfully, but I have never seen a case as complicated as this. And what impressed me with this court this morning, not knowing how they will rule, is that I have never been before judges who were as on top of all of the legal issues and the nuances as these three judges were. It was very impressive, I have to tell you, and it was very humbling. The focus of our argument today was twofold. One, the death penalty, and secondly, racism and jury selection is what we call the Batson issue. Those were the two. And there's a wealth of evidence we have presented that the jury selection process in the trial of this case was riddled with racism. What we want is a new trial in which racism is not a factor, and the jury hears all of the evidence. That's what we are after.
The prosecutor had a chance to pick more black jurors.
Yes, the prosecutor used 25% of his strikes to remove white people, two-thirds of his strikes to remove people of color. That is not fair. That offends the U.S. Constitution.
Yes, sir. You said that you found the proceedings impressive today. What was impressive about
What was impressive is we do not know how the judges rule. And I may not be too happy in a few months from now, or I may be dancing for joy. But what was impressive today is that the judges knew the issues, they knew the law, they knew the right questions. They asked a lot of questions, and it's impressive to be before judges who seem to be concerned about what happened and trying to do the right thing. That's just what they do.
Did the courtroom know the mass of people around here?
Attorney's office in 82 and 81.
He would know.
Racism, yes, I do know. We've done a tremendous amount of work on this case. Racism permeated. There was a pattern of removing people because they were African American from juries by the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. That was a part of the process back at the time of the trial of Mumia Abu-Jamal, and it certainly existed in this case.
Because of that, he couldn't make a fair trial.
No, I mean, how can one have a fair trial when it's riddled with racism? And also, I might mention, and I just was able to touch on it once during the hearing, because we focused so much on racism and jury selection. But I think people are aware that evidence has come forward in recent years that the trial judge in this case, Albert Sabo, said during the trial in reference to Mumia Abu-Jamal, I'm going to help them fry the nigger.
That's right.
Those are the words of Judge Albert Sabo. How can any human being anywhere in the world receive a fair trial when the judge who's presiding over refers to the accused using the N-word and says he's going to help the prosecution see that he's executed.
What's the answer here, new trial?
The answer is a new trial that will be fair, and I can assure you that a new trial will be fair. We will not. There will not be a repeat performance of what happened in 1982. No way. Any other questions from the media? I think everybody, somebody just asked in the press, what are the possible scenarios? And we need to all be aware. One scenario is a new trial, completely new trial. Our goal of all of this, please understand, is to get a new trial, win that retrial, and for Mumia to go home to his wife and family. That's what this is all about. But you need to bear in mind that courts, as we know, are often not fair. The court could rule against us across the board. The court could, and if they did, Mumia would be dead in a relatively short period of time. So very much is at stake. You need to bear that in mind.
You said a new trial. What about a new judge?
If we have a new trial, obviously it's not going to be Judge Sabo for a couple of reasons. One, because he was so biased. Secondly, because Judge Sabo is dead.
We say no to racism!
There are a couple of other scenarios, and I'll just mention one, and that is this case could be not, it may not be one of the two extremes. A new trial, or we lose, and my client goes to the executioner. The court could send it back for a hearing in the lower court, federal court, to develop more evidence. So bear in mind that is a real possibility. So we're not sure where we're going. If the court rules favorably on the racism and jury selection issue, what that will mean is that it will have to go back to a lower court for more hearings. So the fight is not over. We have a ways to go. If the court rules on one of our other two issues, the bias, the racism of Judge Sabo, his unfairness, then obviously that would change the entire landscape of the case. And obviously the prosecutor, which I did not have time to address today, but this is in the briefs we've submitted, argued to the jury that if you make a mistake, in essence, make a mistake on the side of conviction. In other words, he turned reasonable doubt, presumption of evidence on his head. He said there will be appeal after appeal, so if you make a mistake, you know, convict him. It'll be okay. Those other courts will deal with it. But there's only one trial. He lied to the jury, and the court knows that. So there are a lot of scenarios that could happen. I want to thank, on behalf of Mumia, and we talked last night.
What about the Arnold Beverly affidavit?
Arnold Beverly is not an issue in this case. It was rejected long ago by Mumia Abu-Jamal, and it's not there. I mean, it's fine if people want to talk about it, but it has nothing to do with the case. There's a wealth of evidence Mumia should be found not guilty. Okay? We don't need to make up things. Let me say this. Mumia called me last night, and we talked at length. And I told him I thought probably a lot of people would be here today.
Yeah.
And he wanted me just to thank everyone for caring. But he wanted me to remind everybody that this fight, he said, this is not about me, Mumia Abu-Jamal. He said it's about everyone facing the death penalty around the world. It's about all political persons everywhere around the world. And he said that this is a fight against racism and bigotry and courts that are often unfair. And Mumia said his wish, of course he wants to go home to his family, but his wish is that through what we are all doing in this case, all of us are important, that it will help other people, not only here, but around the world, who are similarly situated. So it's typical Mumia. He said, this is not about me, Mumia. It's about everybody who are situated. Mumia Abu-Jamal sits on death row today in a small cell that's probably smaller than a lot of our bathrooms.
Never left it.
He's never left death row. He's been there since 1982. But the reason is, even though the lower court reversed the death penalty, the prosecution, the district attorney of Philadelphia immediately appealed. Mumia has never left death row. He's still under a death judgment, a death sentence, and he still sits in a small cell on death row.